Okay, I think it is now time for our welcoming words, and that's my great honor to be able to welcome all of you to our monthly NAUA service. I'm Todd Eklof, the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane and founder of NAUA, North American Unitarian Association, and we're so glad to have people from across the continent today. We have folks from Mexico and various places in Canada, and we try to hold our services at 10 a.m. Pacific, which is not too early for those of us on this side, but hopefully not too late for most everyone else. But we do have, I saw someone from France popped in. I think it's 7 p.m. there, so not too late yet, but thank you for joining us all the way from France as well. We truly do want to be an association that makes connections all over the world and is about bringing the human family together, not dividing us based upon anything, whether it's our demographics, our locations, our nationality, our ideology. We really want to be an association that is about bringing the human family together, not dividing us based on various issues of identity, as unfortunately has become the case for a lot of organizations these days. So, but it is just wonderful to have you. I think this is the third or fourth service we've had now. This will be my second opportunity to deliver a message at a service, and I'm looking forward to that. It's the first service we've done that is exclusively on Zoom. We experimented a bit with trying to have an in-person live stream Zoom service, and wasn't working as well for us as the Zoom. So we're just going to go with Zoom from now on. But it is wonderful to have you all. As Terry was saying before we got started, NAUA is going to be upgrading our website on Monday. It'll be launching on Monday. So hopefully it will be a more improved website. Our ability to connect and create community is largely going to be due to our use of technology. So we want to do the best that we can as far as that goes. Yeah, NAUunitarians.org is the address. So if you do have any questions, want to know more, want to reach out, want to communicate to us, want to join any of our meetings, if you go to the calendar on the home page and click on the event, it should take you right to whatever link you need to get onto those events. So really wonderful to have all of you. I enjoy being able to welcome folks to our space of worship. It's a deep honor, and to see so many here this morning is especially meaningful. So thank you all for being here. We do not have an official offering during our NAUA services at this time, but I do like to remind folks that we depend upon the generosity of our friends and members. So you can always go online at any time and make a donation, which would be much appreciated. We've already had a lot of generous support, and it's enabled us to do quite a lot here at the very birth of this organization. I think there might even be a QR code that'll go up later in the service if you want to do so on your phone. But anyway, it is a volunteer association. I think it's going to long be led mostly by volunteers, and that is going to help us create the sort of community that we deserve as religious liberals in this world. So again, welcome to our service this morning. I hope you enjoy being with so many folks, whether they are like-minded or not. They are here with us today, and we're creating a community. So welcome to one and all.
Good morning. My name is Bob Meyerson. I live in Castro Valley, California, and I'm a member of the NAUA first in the nation fellowship. here in the East Bay. The opening words today are from Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was a great singer, actor, civil rights activist, peace activist, and he is one of the foremost and one of the first of the freedom fighters in this nation to fight for civil rights. These are his words. I shall take my voice wherever there are those who want to hear the melody of freedom or the words that might inspire hope and courage in the face of despair and fear. My weapons are peaceful, for it is only by peace that peace can be attained. The song of freedom must prevail.
Hi, I'm Roy Dickerton. I'm also from the Hayward Fellowship. We light this chalice as we come together to celebrate who we are, to share the insights that give meaning and hope to our lives. We learn to learn from the wisdom of others, that their truths may contribute to our understanding. We gather, we share, we learn, we celebrate our coming together. That's from Ann Pert.
But it's important to us at NAUA to be inclusive of families and children in our midst. So want to right at the start include stories that can bring children in. During COVID, when we were in Spokane, when we were strictly online, every now and then I'd get a photograph of some kids watching the computer screen during the children's story. Usually when I'm doing it, because I always bring a friend with me. So this is probably a friend that a lot of folks know. This is my dear friend, Mickey Mouse. And Mickey, it's great to see you. Well, it's good to see you too. Hello, everybody. Well, that's very nice of you. So where have you been anyway? Well, I've been hanging out at home. Hanging out at home, I suppose that means you've been at Disneyland? You betcha. With Minnie Mouse, Donald, Goofy, and all the rest of the gang. Very good. Well, Disneyland's got to be a great place to hang out. So any place is good to hang out when you're with friends. Very well said. And that's what I appreciate about you, Mickey Mouse. You always have a positive attitude no matter what happens. Well, glad you think so, because that's why I'm here, to cheer everybody up. Well, that's very nice of you. There's a lot of difficulties in the world right now. We can use a little cheering up. But how did you get to my house all the way in Spokane, Disneyland? Chugga, 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 choo, choo. Ah, you took the train. You got it. Well, did you have any trouble? Such as, well, I'm just thinking about the time you and Pluto took a train ride. Oh, and the conductor said there were no dogs allowed. Yeah, that's right. And you put Pluto in a suitcase, if I remember, and snuck him on anyway. It sure was a tight fit. Yeah, it was. If I remember right, when you took him out, he was a perfect square and you actually had to unfold him. Yeah. And then what happened? Then the conductor tossed it onto the luggage rack. Oh, that's right. You had to sneak him back in real quick. And the conductor sure was mad. Yeah, and Pluto started barking and he gave it away, didn't it? Yeah, he tried to throw us both off the train. Yes, and then what happened? Well, then we hid under a blanket. Oh, I do remember that. And you probably would have gotten away with it had Pluto not started wagging his tail. Yes, it was a dead giveaway. It sure was. So after all that, you got tossed off the train anyway. Yes, but that's okay, because we landed at our final destination. Oh, that's right. It ended up having a positive ending after all. Yes, every ending is a positive as long as you have a good attitude. Well, very good, Mickey. That's good advice for us. Do you feel cheered up? I do. Okay, then it's time for me to go. Okay, thank you. And I see. Now, wait a minute, Mickey. Wait a minute. You know, every time you come, you start to sing that song, and you know that I don't like to sing in front of people. That's okay. I'll do all the singing for us. Oh boy, I didn't think that was gonna, I don't think that's gonna help. Okay, go ahead. NIC. See you real soon, I hope. KEY. Why? Because I like you. NOUSE. All right, thanks for cheering us up, Mickey. Cheerio.
Hi, everybody. So now we'll hear from Mary Bennett for reading.
Okay, glad to be here. Let's find my reading. So I'm Mary, I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and I've recently joined the new NAUA worship team and glad to be part of that. I'm going to read an excerpt from an article by Rabbi Dennis Ross, who wrote an article called "Ritual is Poetry in Action," a quotation from Rabbi Stern, who's a liturgist with Reform Judaism. The first adult religious education course I took at my home congregation 30 years ago was called Creative Ritual. And for 20 years, I've been part of the Unitarian Earth Spirituality group after taking a 10-evening Paganism 101 course at the church. So a confession, I'm Mary, and I actually like ritual a lot. So here's the reading. Ritual. This means that ritual does for behavior what poetry does for words. Ritual lifts ordinary activities the way poetic language elevates commonplace communication. A ritual contributes spiritual elevation to an ordinary deed, just as a poem ennobles casual language. Ritual allows for a broadened perspective on life. In worship services, the ritual of familiar repeated words, community connections, and a focus on learning provides a spiritual pause at the close of a week. It offers an opportunity for renewal. Worship services provide time for considering our rote behaviors, picking at the computer keyboard or pushing the cart down the aisle, in a different and elevated context. Worship is an occasion to consider what the daily grind adds up to. Ritual identifies and establishes meaning that already abides, unnoticed until then, person behavior. Through ritual, a person recognizes the contribution to a larger overarching goal, their contributions to family, community, or the self. Religious community, worship, and celebration. These acts of faith restructure the ordinary as sacred. When life gets eaten up by recurring obligations, when the spirit withers, life cries out to be uplifted through ritual that makes poetry of action.
Thank you, Mary. Oh. All right. Thank you so much, Mary, for that wonderful reading, and thank you, Roy, for into the happy choir for that piece of music. My sermon today is entitled The Worth of Worship: Why Ritual is Even Important for Religious Liberals. And I want to start with mentioning a revered American oracle named Punxsutawney Phil. So if you haven't heard of Punxsutawney, he's a groundhog that has the power to look at his shadow and determine if things will change or remain the same, if tomorrow will be different than today, or if history will only repeat itself. Now, this magical feat occurs each year on February 2nd, Groundhog Day, and has been celebrated with various festivals throughout North America, the most famous of which happens in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. That particular celebration dates back to 1887, which coincidentally is the same year that the Unitarian Church in Spokane was founded, where, as you know, I've been minister for the past dozen years. It's a meaningful coincidence for me because I consider the reason that we celebrate Groundhog Day the same as the reason that we go to church, to help us figure out if tomorrow will be different than today, or if history will only repeat itself, if things will change, or if they will remain the same. And I'll circle back to what I mean by this, but I want to first explain why I believe there is a deeper meaning behind the words that we use in general. So many years ago, when I was still in my 20s, I had just left the Christian faith, and I began searching for another source of meaning and understanding, during which I discovered the voluminous writings of psychologist Carl Gustav Jung, C.G. Jung, and I read most of what he'd written, which is no small task. Considered myself a Jungian for more than a decade, and the only tattoo I have on my body happens to be a symbol found in 2 of his volumes, the image of Aeon, the Babylonian and Greek god of time. So today, I don't consider myself as much a Jungian as I once was, but much of my worldview remains influenced by what I learned during those formative years. Jung taught me to psychologize, to see through surfaces and appearances, to look for the deeper meaning of things. One of those things, which has remained especially important to me, is looking more deeply into the meaning of the words that we use. Jung treated words the same as he treated our symbols, our myths, and our dreams as keys to unlocking unconscious meaning. They can lead to insights about ourselves as individuals and to larger insights about our collective unconscious, because language is ancient and, according to Jung, remains rooted in our archetypal unconscious. So when a patient used a certain word to describe a dream, for instance, and Jung delved into the deeper meaning of the word, a patient might say, well, I didn't actually mean that. I should have used another word. Jung would say it doesn't matter because the initial word sprang from the unconscious and is the one that should be analyzed. So this belief in the deeper ancient and unconscious meaning of words has caused me to regularly think their origins, which is quick and easy these days, thanks to online etymologies. It has also made me reluctant to accept as readily as linguists like John McWhorter do, that the meaning of words change over time. I don't deny this, but also believe, like Jung, that they retain their original meaning, although it has moved into the unconscious. We are, that is, often unconscious of what we are fully saying. Looking into the etymology, into the ancient roots and definitions of words can help us understand what we really mean, and if what we really mean is worth thinking, let alone saying. Fewer words are as unconsciously potent than those associated with religion, like God, church, ritual, worship, and religion itself. Just consider how they make you feel when you hear them. God, church, ritual, worship, religion. Some of these feelings may come from our own personal experiences with religion, but much of the sentiments they touch off, especially revulsive feelings, also come from the long ago past, particularly the historic traumas religion is often associated with. There came a point in my life that these words evoked negative responses and associations for me, as they do for most anyone who's been burned or disillusioned by religion, but also because of the ancient cruelties and injustices their invocations still echo. Human sacrifices, superstition, authoritarianism, persecution, holy wars, inquisitions, torture, dogmatism, the suppression of science and reason, and so on. This isn't to say that there aren't many who experience positive associations with these same words, feelings of warmth and nostalgia akin to a Pavlovian response to terms like country mom and apple pie. But our liberal religion is rooted in its opposition to religious dogmatism and authoritarianism and the status quo. And most of us have come to this religion after having had our own negative experiences with other mainstream religions. This is why many Unitarians and Unitarian Universalist churches don't even call themselves churches, because many of us don't want to have anything to do with church ever again. This word touches off adverse feelings of disgust, fear, and anger, so we prefer to call our churches communities, fellowships, or congregations, although those that have been around for much longer than a few decades are still mostly called churches. Over the years, I've occasionally had visitors and a few members to the churches I've been at tell me that they wish ours wasn't called a church simply because the word bothers them. Others have argued ours can't be a church because we don't worship God or Jesus or believe in the Bible. How can it be a church if it doesn't have any of the qualities most in Western society associate with religion? Still, I prefer church to those other labels: community, fellowship, congregation. The word itself comes from an ancient Greek term that is often translated as the Lord's house. And since for Christians, ancient and modern, Lord refers to God alone, church has come to be associated with a place of Christian worship. But for the Greeks, it simply referred to the dwelling place of any ruler or leader, the Lord, and was thus associated with any place people assembled to handle important matters. To the Greeks, the White House would have been called a church, as would the government building situated on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, Canada's capital city. So a church is but a place that groups of people officially assemble to do important things for their communities. And I think Unitarians assemble to do just that. I've also long felt that if words like church, along with worship and ritual and so forth, are allowed to refer only to the worst that religion has to offer, then we leave the world with only the worst kind of religion. Our liberal churches exist to offer something better. Religion itself is a word containing the same root as ligament, from a Proto-Indo-European word meaning to tie or to bind together, or as we can more simply say, to join together. Hence, the word religion means to reconnect, to rejoin, to religament, maybe even to heal what has been broken or severed or injured. And I think that describes well what happens or should happen in a Unitarian and Unitarian Universalist church, congregation, fellowship, or whatever else we want to call them. It is this deeper meaning of religion then, so much of what has been called religion, that so many of us are repulsed by. It is the very opposite of religion. Organizations and ideologies that have been used to sever the human family on theological grounds, segregating us based on mere beliefs, are not religious. Those that cut us off from our own minds and bodies by convincing us we'll go to hell if we think the wrong thoughts, and that our natural desires are so profane we must suppress every instinct, are not religious. Those that cut us off from free thought, reason, science, and other means of connecting with empirical reality, with the world in which we live, are not religious. Those that sever our vital and inherent connection to the earth we depend on and that requires us to respect and care for it, claiming it as fallen and corrupt or merely an illusion that causes suffering if we cling to it, are not religious. Religion binds us to reality. It binds us to the earth. It binds us to our minds and bodies and hearts. And it binds us to each other no matter where we are from, what we look like, or how different we might be. In her best-selling book, The Great Transformation, The Beginning of Our Religious Traditions, theologian Karen Armstrong discusses the period between 900 and 200 BCE, during which the world's great religions emerged, those that remain with us today. Back then, she says, what mattered was not what you believed, but how you behaved. And this is still what religion is supposed to be about, a way of living that enables us to live peacefully and justly with others, not as an excuse to justify oppressing, exploiting, and segregating ourselves from them because of beliefs we consider right and righteous. And that is what our Unitarian religion is supposed to be about, respecting the inherent worth and dignity of every person, no matter where their free and responsible search for truth and meaning leads them. Again, as Armstrong explains, at the beginning, the only way you could encounter God, Nirvana, Brahman, or the way was to live a compassionate life. Indeed, religion was compassion. As for the axial sages, as far as the axial sages were concerned back then, respect for the sacred rights of all beings, not orthodox beliefs, was religion. So now that we understand what religion really means, or ought to mean, we might ask, what's the point of having churches or congregations or fellowships or, again, whatever we choose to call our places of assembly? What is the point of assembling if religion is about how we live? Shouldn't we be out in the world demonstrating our values and our compassion? Isn't that where religion happens, not clustered together among some small group of like-minded individuals? Yes. Of course, religion is a way of life, not an event on Sundays or Saturdays in this case, or whatever day of the week we assemble together, believers assemble. More people, I would say, who claim to be religious need to understand that religion is about how we behave every day, how we treat others, not where and when we worship. And that's another of those hot button words, isn't it? Worship, especially for us religious liberals. It's a word that tends to conjure images of hundreds of thousands of devotees gathering to humble and prostrate themselves before an almighty deity, an image that can be anathema to our humanistic traditions. And I don't mean to imply that all religious liberals are followers of the humanism that formally emerged in the 20th century. Unitarianism, however, does refer to a humanistic Christology that is ancient. It began 2,000 years ago as the belief in Jesus as a human being, not a God, and that rather than worship him, we should put his humanitarian and communitarian into practice to save the world. When Western Unitarianism emerged during the Enlightenment, it too was rooted in a positive notion of human worth, agency, and potential. That which today we define as the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Unitarianism is humanism with a small h. But if not to humbly bow before our God, if not to worship, why do we assemble in whatever we call our buildings? My answer is that in our religion, we do meet in churches to worship. If you didn't catch it, I just used all three of the Pavlovian words I've discussed so far in a single sentence. In our religion, we do meet in churches to worship. I've already spoken about churches being a place to assemble and religion being a way of ethical and compassionate living. But what about worship? How do religious liberals worship. Some of you may recall the last time I spoke at an NAUA service, I also talked a bit about the etymology of this word. The root of the word worship is worth, same as in worthy and worthwhile. It is an old world term that was used rather to refer to anything that has value. And that's how we worship in our churches, not by bowing down before a deity as if we are less worthy or unworthy, but by lifting up the principles and the causes and the values that we have, the things that are worth bringing up and lifting up. From our pulpits, we hear challenging and informative sermons about the matters we care about and ought to care about every day, wherever we are, with whomever we are. These days, I find myself talking a lot about human dignity, the freedom to think, speak, and participate, the importance of reason and empirical evidence for our beliefs, and toleration in order to live peaceably with others. These are the kinds of matters we value and consider worthy of raising up from our pulpits, matters we want to reflect upon and be reminded of, so that when we are out in the world practicing our religion, the only place it can be practiced, we more readily recall what life and living is really all about. But if this is so, why all the traditional pomp and pageantry that goes along with it? Why not just have a discussion group? Why the hymns and readings, the preludes and postludes, the chalice lightings and benedictions? I know of many visitors who come to our churches hoping to find something different, but leave complaining it feels too much like church. Well, it feels like church because it is church. And like any church, we have our rituals. The difference in our church and other churches is content, not context. We sing hymns about the glory of nature, not the glory of God, hymns about our own responsibility and power to make the world better and more just, not about a miraculous redeemer or a heavenly afterlife. We hear readings from the wealth of human wisdom and creativity, from philosophy and science, poetry and prose, in books of all sorts, not just the Bible, although readings from it and other religions can also make their way into our services. So this leads to the final word I want us to consider: ritual. When I met with the worship team of my Spokane congregation for the first time, one of its members asked me how I felt about specific rituals that had long been part of its services. My response was, I don't care what rituals you have, as long as you have rituals. It's ritual, and rituals are, to me, the most important part of coming to church. They are the reason we come and the reason we make coming one of our rituals, and the rituals in our lives. Let me explain what I mean by, again, turning to the origin of this word. Ritual derives from the same root as from the same root as words like routine, route, and rut. Their common root refers to anything that is often repeated. Rites and rituals and religious ceremonies are one example. A road or path or track that takes us back and forth along the same route is another. The neural pathways etched into our brains by repeated behaviors and experiences is yet another. All creatures, including humans, are creatures of habit. It is ritual that makes us. Our bodies, our brains, our behaviors have been shaped by evolution over eons of repetitive responses to our environment, over ritual behavior. And our individual lives are also largely orchestrated by repetition, repetitive responses, beliefs, and habits. If they are part of our daily lives, we call them routine. If they become negative, meaningless, or boring, we call them ruts. And if we repeat them weekly in a formal or ceremonial context, we call them ritual. Ritual, routine, ruts are the means by which life evolves and the way in which all creatures move through life. Life is ritual. And this is why we go to church. There's a beautiful reading in the back of our UU hymnal written by Reverend Kathleen McTeague that says, "We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude. Wiley's interrupting here. Oh, awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This community of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. And that's why we come together, to remind one another to rest for a moment and to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, to resist the thoughtless repetition of our routines. Our lives do not take place in church any more than our religion does. Life and religion happen out there beyond our sanctuaries in the real world. It is there, caught up in samsara, the wheel of life, the daily grind that we go about each day, much as we did the day before and much as we will do again tomorrow. We get up about the same time each day, maybe start with a cup of coffee and breakfast, shower and groom, then take the same route to work, get there to do the same job, probably have many of the same conversations we usually have, leave work, take the same route home, repeat our nightly routines, dinner, relax, enjoy what little free time we have with some other nightly ritual, then go to bed, sleep, wake up, and start all over again. There's nothing wrong with this, as mundane as I make it sound. Again, this is how life works. It is how evolution shapes us through habits. But if we aren't careful about which habits we develop, we might come to feel that we are stuck in a rut and that our lives have become boring and meaningless, or more accurately, boring because they have become meaningless. Thus, maintaining a sense of purpose and meaning beyond our routines requires us to be reminded of other routes, of other ruts, other rituals, other grooves to get into that help us realize there is something more to our lives than our routines, something more important than we are, that we are also supposed to be about. And that is why we go to church, another routine, and experience its rituals, because they help us shift from our daily rut or route or ritual into another rut, route, or ritual, if for no other reason than to remind us not to get trapped in our paradigms and habits, because there is so much more to life and so much more that we need to do. We come together to remind one another. That's what church ritual is about. It is a reminder to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment by remembering what life is really about. And this is why we assemble together once a week in our churches, or once a month during our NAUA service, or but once a year in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, to help us figure out if tomorrow will be different than today, or if history will only repeat itself, if things will change or remain the same. Thank you.
The benediction. Let us pray for wisdom and peace as we pursue justice, hope, and love for all people. And what is required of us: justice, love kindness, and to walk humbly with all. For we are of one humanity, flesh, blood, and bone. We toil, sweat, bleed for our hopes. Through failings and successes, we are here for but a radiant instant that has immense meaning. And we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And after our postlude, there will be a social time in breakout rooms. And hopefully this postlude will go better than the last one. Okay.